Okay. So what is happening here is, if I have 4 connections which is paid and bought for, I can make only 4 connections to the external internet at the same time. In the sense, say for example, I am opening 4 or 5 connections to the Google server from my system alone. Then it is not possible to have an individual system to have 4 connections to the same server, because you will not say, if I'm trying to use HTTP protocol in one, FTP protocol in the other, or some other thing. You can't have accessing the same protocol. In the sense, you can't be having HTTP protocol only in all the 4 connections. If one connection works with mail, HTTP, another connection can work with Telnet or the remote teleconferencing software, or another one can work with FTP, the file transfer protocol. Okay, so please understand, all you need to know in this is, if I have a pool of addresses connected also, there are some disadvantages like this. In the sense, I can make a maximum of that many connections. If you have bought 4 addresses to the external internet, you can make a maximum of 4 connections, not more than that simultaneously. And one single private network host or a client can access 2 external service server programs can't be done. In the sense, from the single host, from my laptop, I can't access both the Google server as well as the FTP server at once. If I am accessing the global Google server, I stop there. I can't do an access, or I can't do a file transfer at the same time, because my system is recognized with one IP, one private IP address. So if I'm trying to make 2 different connections, one a file transfer, one accessing the Google or mail, that is not possible, because the router will not be able to recognize when it is receiving packets from 2 different connections. One is a file, one is from the Google. It won't be able to recognize which packet should be forwarded to which program, which service program on your system. So the second disadvantage here is, a single host can't access 2 type of external server programs like HTTP and FTP or something like that. And the third disadvantage is, 2 private network hosts can't access the same external server program. In the sense, say I am connected to the internet and my son is also connected to the internet, and both of us are using one common address to the external internet connection. If I am accessing Gmail, my son can't be accessing Gmail at the same time. So that means to say, 2 private network clients can't access a single server program at once, even if I have 4 connections. I have bought 4 connections, but both of them can't access the same Gmail server program together. Again, this problem arises because of a single port being used there. So all this can be avoided with the last category, where we make use of both IP addresses and port addresses. As I told you, this is called a socket. A combination of IP and port addresses will be used to with a pool of addresses. So whatever we had in the previous, I'm going to use a pool of address, or I'm going to buy a set of addresses for my private connection. Along with that buying set of address, in the forwarding table, see, in the previous forwarding table, we had only 2 columns. One is the private address, one is the universal address. If I have this kind of forwarding table with this pool of address, all these 4 problems which I stated will happen. All these problems will happen. So if we should avoid these problems, if I should be having 4 connections to the same server program, or 4 different connections from one system itself, all that, if it should be possible. I hope you understood these 2 statements. One system trying to make 4 different types of connection, or multiple systems trying to connect to the same server. Both of them will not be possible if you had a forwarding table which had only 2 columns like this. Only 2 column forwarding table, those things are not allowed. But the same thing if I make a forwarding table which has more than 2 columns. I'll use a pool of IP addresses and I will have the port numbers and IP addresses mapped in the forwarding table or the translation table. Then all this is possible. You can see an example here. The forwarding table will be having private addresses in the first column, corresponding port numbers. So this private address with this port number is trying to access the external address 25.8.3.2. The second system you see with private address 3.2 with a different port number 1401 is trying to access the same external address. So the same Gmail server both of them are trying to use. And the external port is mapped to 80 and it is the type of protocol used. This is optional, but usually we include this also. So this is our current forwarding table formed at NAT routers today. So which will have private address, the port number, the external address, external port number along with the protocol used. So if all this is provided, whatever disadvantages I had in the previous connection, that will be overcome. In the sense, here it's clearly shown 2 different devices with 2 different port numbers can access the same external device, same external program like your Gmail or something, and the external program can have the same port number and same protocol also. So when the response from this external server, the HTTP server is used for Gmail connections. When it comes back, the combination of the source address, which is 25.8.2 will be the source address of the Gmail server. So that along with destination port number will define which private network device should get this packet. So if the combination has this address and port number 1401, the device which receives the packet will be .18.3.2. If the combination has this address 25.8.3.2 as the source and the port number 1400, then it will send that packet to the address .3.1. So this kind of combination of port and IP address called as a socket is the best way where we can make use of NAT, or multiple private addresses with just few external connections to the internet. This is very useful and cost effective because at a time no more than 4 people may be talking to the external world in some organization. So there's no point if you have 100 employees, I need not buy 100 connections. Buy only 4 and you expect at a time 4 people get provision. Or maybe one person can have 4 different connections. That is possible because of the mapping of port number along with IP address. Anyway, let me stop here where we have completed NAT. How forwarding takes place, we'll see in the next class. So all of you just drop in your USN with section. Now, any doubts if you have in this NAT, please ask. And any other issues, please tell me. I think the PPTs and notes of all this has already been circulated in the beginning itself. And I think for the C section, Raghuram has already placed it on some server where anybody can access it, right? All of you can access the notes and PPT. Everything is available already. Please read through day to day. It would be very useful. Otherwise, there are too many things. The subject is voluminous. It would be difficult for you to remember if you study everything at one stretch. Please try to read small portions day to day. It would be easy for you to remember and recall the earlier things next day when you start reading something new. That would be the best way to remember. Don't forget recall. That's why even in class, I'll use 5 minutes to recall the previous class.